So I was going to react to this one video by a black person. Hopefully they're not where I think they're from. But basically the whole thing of their channel is self-hate. Then I realized that one person I've already reacted to it. And you will see how obviously when black people repeat things they like, they're suddenly in love with black people. But let's watch it.
Just get into this guy here.
Bible foundation is its downfall. There are more people in Africa than in any other country on earth, except Africa is not a country.
So this video starts off with a false statement, which Africa has the most amount of people on earth, which is not true. Obviously, Asia has way more people. I mean, just China alone as a country has way more people in their area than Africa put together. With this level of lack of research, you would think that the person would first put down their whatever they're recording with, first go do their research, and then come back and give their opinion.
You can fit in Russia, the US, Germany, the UK, France, Japan, and many more countries into Africa. They'll all fit.
I just want you to see that real quick again so people get an understanding of this. Africa itself is so huge that, well, they've got Russia and America in the Sahara Desert, which I've shown before, and the fact that it's an impassable desert.
Except it's not an impassable desert. It's a very passable desert, and it's been passable since ancient times. That's why it doesn't make sense to call things like sub-Saharan Africa, which they will go deep into in this video because, of course, they're obsessed with the idea of black Africans. The black guy who is talking may seem like he's friendly in the way he's talking, but he brought us hits like why black people make the worst fathers and stuff like that. And I will react to some of his videos too.
It's just the land of death of the abyss, and that's what kept them separated so much and everything. But that was a good thing, and rather than this happening long ago, or the earth might not even be as advanced as it is now, just the integration of it. But you can see all these countries that are in there, so how huge it is and how much resources they have, and everybody talks about it. It's just so amazing.
And how Muslims wrote about how these people continually use their extensive resources to trade with the rest of the world forever, building up their empires and creating great civilizations. Mention that part too. Possibly even heading to the Americas.
The only problem is they can't know what it is. The diamond mine that they made there in Zimbabwe or whatever, those people had no idea what it was or it was any value. It's a rock. You want to give us how much money for rocks? Yeah, they have no value. It's not a diamond to them. It's not the wedding thing. It's not anything to do with anything.
So of course all these are lies. We all know, based on written records and paintings and images and found stuff, that Africans, even though they didn't value gold as money, they will still put it around their wrists, they still put it around their bodies, they still took diamonds and mixed them with the rest of their beads. This idea that they actually didn't care about these things is silly.
Gold itself, all things that you could think of that would be worth something, a lot of times they have no clue about it whatsoever.
So to debunk this, all you need to do is just go on to the British Museum. Just go online, the British Museum, and look up Zimbabwe gold. And you will see that the people used gold in many ways. And then, of course, they used other things like brass, like other irons and leather and stuff like that. The only reason this person is saying what he's saying is because, well, firstly, he wants to believe what he's saying.
But let's look deeper here. He tells you how many countries you can fit in there. Why is he telling you this vastness? And why would these people have to leave this to come be around you? Well, they want to, but why should anybody let them? I mean, nobody's going to take the headhunters of Irian Jaya and throw new clothes on them and want. Oh, well, I bet Karen would try.
I'm not gonna lie, this guy sounds very tired. I can barely understand what he is saying. Like, there's a part of me that makes me think that this stuff makes him very tired.
Oh yeah, and people that want to. Aw. Well, it's just ruin everything. Aw.
France, Japan, and many more countries into Africa. They'll all fit in with more room for many more. Africa is not a monolith, it is huge. However, when Africa is mentioned, most people typically refer to sub-Saharan Africa.
Well, depends what they're talking about. A lot of the time, people are talking about Egypt, and a lot of people, it depends what they're talking about. Most of the time, when people are talking about Africa, they're just talking about the entirety of Africa. Anyone who even knows about Africa can barely even separate these two areas. Also, the place where you separated them is not good because it's so far to the south that you've missed out so many areas of black people. Not to say that the North African areas are not black people areas too. There's plenty of black people there.
Or best put, Black Africa. Therefore,
So we all know that the place where he cut is ridiculous. So really, he cut off Nigeria, he cut off Mauritania, cut off Chad, which is ridiculous, cut off Sudan. Some of the most the black, in fact, some of the places where if you don't call these people black, then you should not be calling anybody else in the world black. These are the originators of these words, black.
for the purpose of this video, I'm going to separate North Africa from Africa.
Wow, aren't you an innovator? So you're going to do what everybody else does so that they can try and make their problem a lot simpler so that they can attack people, because of course if you had to include all of Africa, you'd have to start insulting white people, and then the problem would be that you don't want to do that.
Its historicity and reality seem divorced from sub-Saharan Africa.
The fact that you're using the BBC intro for African civilizations to try and make your point is disgusting. First of all, that documentary was talking about African civilizations and how we're not divorced from the rest of the other civilizations. So this person who's living on maximum racist time writes new clothes now, which is trying to say that the people in Africa did not have anything close to the type of clothing that they have right now. I don't know why he says new clothes, which is ridiculous. But as you guys know, if you've ever watched my channel, this is one of the most disgusting takes that these people have. I mean, Africans have been building what people call modern clothing forever. And there is a reason why I always stress this. And this is because I think it's one of those things that have been abandoned by these people, but it's something that they've believed for a long time, that Africans could not create um, sophisticated clothing. But then they went and checked, and there was a whole bunch of evidence of it. So then they went, "Oh no, they got it from the North Africans." You know, that's their way of getting out of that conversation. This guy is even worse. He just believes that Africans were wearing skins and probably got modern clothes now.
Africa was home to people who lived in petty tribal chiefdoms and occasionally kingdoms. Their languages are so diverse, even among people living in close proximity. Their world was not designed to grow past their limited tribal existence.
So, in order to debunk this, we don't need the high sophistication of modern technology. All we need is the 1700s maps made by Europeans. So, as you can see here in Hambana, Sofala, Kilwa, Monomatapa, These are large places. These are not petty chieftains. Um, Angola, right there. Monoemuji Monomuji. You see Kilwa right there, large area, Zanzibar being connected. This place here is unknown to Europeans, wholly unknown to Europeans. It was part of a greater empire. We can talk about that some other time. Then you can see there Angola, Kingdom of Congo, Lowango. None of these are petty chieftains. These petty chieftains, or when people remained in tribes, were the ones that survived the complete attacks of Europeans. Others just mixed in with the European culture when they took over. Guinea, Benin. Think about how large these places are. And then you can see here Negro land. And this is an important part because of the Niger River, a lot of the time they separate Negro to mean people living in this area. Zara Desert or the Sahara Desert. Then you can see again Nubia. Then you can see think about the borders that are being laid out here. You're talking about giant clumps of land. You're not talking about tiny little pieces of empire, like, oh, this tiny piece. And then of course, even in North Africa, it's the same. They're not tiny little pieces of land belonging to one chief or another. Instead, they're very large empires, or even worse, just kingdoms or very large settlements.
For example, Cameroon, which is bigger than the UK, has about 30 million people, smaller than Spain, but has over 270 ethnic groups speaking different languages.
So, calling these languages might be fine if you're talking about it in a general sense, but they're really not languages. Most of the languages, quote unquote, of Cameroon are Bantu in history, and they're just dialects of the same language. In the same way that China has about 300 dialects, India about the same number. I mean, India has even different languages with a larger number. And then, you go to South Africa, go to all these other places, and you will see the same thing. These are really dialects, not languages. And then also, they don't represent necessarily a completely different grouping. Because as mentioned, China is a great example. China is an amazing example. China was one civilization. The fact that they have many dialects does not prove that they were a disconnected civilization. Something you'll notice about Cameroon is that it's not just stuck in the southern parts. In the southern parts, the parts that are Bantu, they're all used to speak one major language as a lingua franca, and there was Douala, Duala. So even though they're the regional languages, they had a lingua franca combining them together. If you notice at the top, right, this pod connects to Nigeria and other places. That area is come in at one point by Fulani people, and that's fine. Again, the Fulani have a lingua franca, even though they do have regional languages, which are even smaller. So the question is, how did the Chinese deal with it? If there's 300 dialects in China, how did they make it work? And the answer is very simple: a lingua franca, Mandarin. There are other languages that acted as regional lingua francas, like Cantonese. So Guanghua, which is Mandarin, and Gondohua, which is Cantonese, act as two major lingua francas in the region, combining them rather than these separated tribes that a lot of people like to believe existed.
How could you possibly get 270 languages in the area of the UK or Britain area and then expect to have any cohesion whatsoever?
Very easy, as I've already demonstrated. And also, the place that he's pointing out seems like he's pointing out Gabon and then going, that's Cameroon. So the first guy, when he said Cameroon, mentioned the correct spot. This guy over here is pointing at Gabon and then saying it's Cameroon. And I know this is deliberate because he had to go further into the video in order to make this work. Why would he, if he believes what he's saying, why would he change what this guy is talking about? This guy is agreeing with you on your nonsense, and yet you still have to add a little bit of spice to the conversation to try and make it fit what you want it to fit. That flag isn't even from Cameroon. That's a flag of Gabon. Yep. I guess he just didn't have enough faith in what he was saying.
Well, every one of them deserves to have their own language, and they're all just tribal people. A lot of the Western people can't even understand or fathom this concept that because, Russia is so vast and all the people are somewhat unified together or
So it may seem fun to just make stuff up, but let's start by demolishing what he's saying. So while it is true that Russia is a wide area and has a lot of languages, first of all, a lot of it is uninhabitable. But let's zoom in on one piece of Russia. You notice the orange part that's written Dagestan? That's a tiny piece of Russia. It's the Republic of Dagestan. It's inside of Russia. It's a part of Russia. It has 40 languages, and it's not even close to the size of England. Not to mention that if you just expand it in the same way, so you take Dagestan and you make it the size of Cameroon, not only would it make sense that if you just blew it up, it would eventually reach 200 languages, right? If you make the comparison, it's normal to have over 200 languages in a small space. The only time it disappears is if something like Arabic comes in or something and says we're all going to speak one language and that's it. By the way, this is not odd. If you look at some place like Pakistan, they there too have over 100 languages. Now you must remember there's going to be one language in all of these places that is spoken much more than others. Because of the spread of French or English or any of these in Africa, the big language now tends to be a version of French. Whereas, if you go to Congo in the past, it would be Congolese language, which would be the most widely spoken. And then you'd have the regional ones.
all of Europe or the people that made up the Americas were from Spain and France and different places, but they came together to make one thing happen. But they were a people that knew what they were doing, figured it out, wanted to make something that was better. Believe it or not, these people in the Congo and stuff don't have a concept of better. They don't have a concept of maintenance. They don't have a concept of better than, where one thing is better than another. They don't have any concept that would eventually lead to an advanced civilization.
So some of you obviously know that Congo had a civilization that's been going on for a long time. I've got a feeling he's not going to appreciate it coming from a black man. So let's let the white man tell it.
When discussing the nations that people consider to be superpowers in their regions, one might say the Soviet Union, the Qing Dynasty of China, the United States, Great Britain, or Napoleonic France. But today, we will focus on a lesser-known power that was very important in the scheme of world history that isn't really talked about so much. Today, we will take a look at the African super. The Kingdom of Congo was a country that existed in Central Africa between the years of 1390 all the way up until 1914, the Republic of Congo. A unique feature of the country was the level of centralization that it possessed. This allowed the nation to expand and also stay very stable. This centrality was provided because of the high population density around the capital city. When the Portuguese eventually traveled to the capital city, they described it as a very large city. This meaning that the population of the nation was very large. How large to be exact? Well, the population of the nation at this time was nearly 500,000 people, with 100.
So there you go, little man. The Kingdom of Congo is completely opposite of what you wanted it to be. And everything that you're talking about is the full force of nonsense combined into one little ball called racism. And of course, you go and find some black guy who agrees with you, and then, which, by the way, he says a whole bunch of nonsense, which we're going to investigate in videos in the future.
He said it a few times. Oh, you hear from you? Oh, Whitey, oh, shut the fuck up and listen. You're not paying attention. You're so busy trying to be the victim, you can't even listen to the thing. No one can talk to you and tell you your problem.
I want to sound rude, but doesn't this guy sound like he's slurring his words a little bit? Doesn't he sound kind of, you know, tipsy or
Problems, you are just you're fucked. Hey, I mean, ain't nobody gonna talk to me. Well, you're just fucked then.
Africa?
Let's continue.
Gabon also, just 3 million people, bigger than the UK, has over 40 ethnic groups speaking different languages.
Dagestan, smaller than the UK, has 40 languages. So your theory destroyed.
This made for nation building difficult.
To say that it made nation building difficult is an understatement. A lot of people think, well, you just do this and da da da, and a couple of $1 billion and da da da, and everything. No, not happening. The concept here is incapable.
So the kingdom of Luango is located in what is now known as Gabon. And not only was it capable, but there's entire books written by people at the time who lived through it. And it's actually very hilarious that they go out of their way to try and force this idea. Now, I would say that it's probably due to a lack of knowledge that both of them are saying this, but I don't think that's the problem. Both of them are coming across as very, very, what's the word, ignorant of reality. I mean, their theory I've already crushed. Now, of course, the other guy is jumping into the racist conclusion that the people in Africa were just incapable, which is ridiculous, especially considering what we have already achieved today. I mean, look at how we're operating today. So clearly, we were capable of doing all kinds of things. Like, so silly. By the way, don't buy this stupid thing of like, if you guys had a past of tribalness, that means that you're not capable today. That doesn't even make any sense. Okay, let's take Egypt, for example. People say the people of Egypt today are the same as the people of Egypt back in the day. And even if they're not, the people of the Middle East were some of the most capable people when it came to civilization. How come they're not winning all the Nobel Prizes? How come they're not dominating the world? How come they're not building all the rockets? Why is there more um, sectarian violence coming from that area than some kind of cohesive, one unified project leading them to the future? I mean, that area was the most dominant area. Also, how come Greece and Italy are nothing compared to the science that is happening in other parts of Europe? When in the past, they literally were the king makers. They basically would put the rest of Europe to shame, invention wise. If it's genetic, then that's the way we have to look at it.
Incapable. You're not listening. Everybody wishes the world was a certain way, but it's not that way. Well, I want to make it that way. Quit. Stop, Karen. Stop the stupidity. How about you leave them alone?
I actually have no idea what he's talking about. I am lost. Like he's throwing too many things out there which are disconnected. Something about Karen, something about people want the world to be a certain way. They want it to be what way? Peaceful? Is that the way you're trying to talk about? And then it's like, stop. Yeah. I have no idea to try to connect these together and try to make them make sense. I would have to like dig deep into the mind of an alcoholic.
Can't do that. Gotta be in the middle of it all. What would happen to you if you were in the middle of it all?
Again, just saying anything. Gotta be in the middle of it all. Who has got to be in the middle of it all? And then he says, gotta be in the middle of it all. Did he just stop talking about the video and start reading a poem? You've got to be in the middle of it all. What would happen to you if you were in the middle of it all? Is that like a philosophical question? What's happening here?
Is that where Karen needs to go? What the?
I'm not even trying to be unnecessarily rude. I actually have no idea what he just said. I'm going to try and listen again so I know what he said. All I heard was, is that why Cain needs a goat? Is that a biblical reference? Because Cain didn't sacrifice any goats to God?
Is that where Karen needs to go? What the?
Is that where Karen needs to go? Is that where Karen needs to go? What the hell is this guy talking about? This is the most confusing sentence. Is this okay? Okay, I'm trying to make sense of someone who's clearly messed up in the mind.
Is that where Karen needs to go? What the?
The structure of the African chiefdoms before the Europeans arrived largely lacked a standardized educational system.
So we're gonna have to go through it, are we? So this idea that they lacked standardized education is one of the dumbest points ever. We know for a fact that all these places had standardized education. And not only did they have that, they were Muslims. The Congolese regions literally had Portuguese people there, and they were speaking Portuguese, and they were learning the same stuff that Europeans were learning. What are you talking about? The type of education, if you think that by this time there was no education, then you believe that in Europe and in Asia there wasn't any standardized education. I'm not even gonna Let's not even go dive deep in the fact that Africans had giant schools that everybody used to teach the people. They're not just chieftains. They definitely were tribal people who lived around the areas, because Africans didn't believe in slaughtering every single person who doesn't belong to your tribe, and they didn't enslave them all. That's a clue, by the way, for anyone who's out there. They didn't go and enslave every other person. That's why there's tribes that are still around, running around doing what they want. So what he's saying is actually ridiculous. I've shown, oh my God. So in Africa, in the Islamic areas, generally, there's something called the Quranic board. And the Quranic board is not just in Black Africa with your racist self. You can see here that the pale skin people are using the Quranic board. So if you want to use it as an example of non sophistication, then you have to say that North Africa was not sophisticated either. Now, since I started this way, they're going to say, but these are the white people. Okay, well, then here are some black people for you who are kids learning the Quranic board. And this has been going on since Islam, the conversion of Islam. In fact, this is the way that people used to teach before the Islamic and Arabic things came in. The Quranic board is actually borrowed from West Africa from another board that was not Quranic. For anyone curious about these boards, look up one of my videos. I might link it in the chat, that talks about the Quranic boards and talks about the boards that existed in West Africa and how they used to teach a drum language with it, and how Egyptians used to write on boards as well. Much better than paper when it comes to erasing.
City planning, recycling, waste management, and hospitals in the true sense of the word. They had
So he said three things. He said city planning, waste management, and hospitals in the true sense of the word. Notice that he says in the true sense of the word, because he wants to eliminate the fact that Africa had hospitals back in the day. But let's take city planning. Is an example of city planning. He shows Great Zimbabwe because it looks to him like it's just a rock surrounding nothing. There was a city around Great Zimbabwe, not to mention that he's only showing like a small piece of it. So you've got here city planning, then, of course, you've got waste management. No person would have described Africa as a dirty place before this play, before the modern times when they started, shipping out all kinds of plastics, which people don't even know what to do with in any part of the world. And then hospitals. First of all, the medical stuff in Africa was way better than that of Europe. That's why we have so much more people than Europe had. They had all kinds of black plagues that destroyed them, while in Africa that we were just touched a little bit because we had built up such immunities from all kinds of stuff. And yeah, even in places which are very isolated away from the Arabian areas, leave us alone.
Human sacrifices with human skulls on display in most of the various chiefdoms and kingdoms.
Most most kingdoms, human sacrifice in most chiefdoms and kingdoms. Are you kidding me? First of all, let's pick a few civilizations that didn't do human sacrifices. How about the Xhosas, the Mfengu, the Zulu, the Congolese, the Swahili coast? A whole bunch of people in Africa didn't do human sacrifices at all. They, like, it doesn't even map on to their religion. It doesn't even make sense. Now, were there some places that did human sacrifice? Few and far between. Also, something that's stupid is that a lot of people they see images of Africans carrying skulls and they think human sacrifice. No, how about skulls of the enemies, not human sacrifice? If you want a place that did human sacrifice, go look in Europe.
The great kingdom of Benin had human skulls in the king's palaces. Imagine a land the size of Belgium with over 50 chiefdoms and kingdoms speaking different languages. This made for nation building very difficult.
Now I know that some of you are gonna be like, "Oh my God, they kept human skulls. That's so terrible." You know who else kept human skulls? Europeans. Europeans kept tons of human skulls, especially that of slaves, and they would trade them with one another. You can watch this documentary free of charge on YouTube. It's called The Trade in Human Skulls from the Colonial Era, a disturbing legacy. It's from 8 months ago. Literally, Europeans used to kill people and then trade their skulls. Now, human sacrifice is usually something that's done for religion. Europeans used to kill people for no reason. In some senses, they used to do it for sport, where they would let their slaves run around and then they would pick them off like animals. In some cases, they would snap crocodiles at them. In other cases, they would test the limits of their body by sticking needles in them. Close the legs of females when they're pregnant and about to give birth, or spread them apart and rip them into pieces. So I don't want to hear this crap.
For the European.
It made it impossible. Not real difficult. And you see, these people aren't trying to get from there to here because they don't even know where here is.
So I understood the first part of what he was saying. And then after that, he was like, and these people weren't trying to get from here to there because they don't know where here is. In the comments, can someone please tell me what the hell he's talking about? I have no idea. Maybe I'm stupid. I don't know what he's talking about. Also, it didn't make it impossible. They literally had a civilization that was forcefully working together at the time called the Kingdom of Benin. And then right next to it, there was another one, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one.
Mentally, they have no clue where here is. Mentally, they have no clue what civilization and things are. It's just as foreign to them as something from another planet.
I don't know. Again, I have no idea what he's talking about. This guy clearly is not listening to this. The other parts this guy is saying. I mean, clearly there were civilizations in Africa, and civilizations aren't as foreign to them as like an whatever from another planet. That's just stupid.
People don't understand this. And then you shove them around you and everything fucks up with them and they have an issue and you wonder why.
What the hell was that sentence? Answers on the chalkboard for anyone who can figure that out.
Like you can't fathom reality somehow. because it's not my utopian dream. I thought aren't we all gonna say kumbaya? That's a song made for come by here, my lord, trying to put the Caucasian God on these people that aren't mentioned in that book and didn't care at all. They got their whole thing going on, but you want to ruin that?
Again, my best attempt at trying to understand what he's saying. He's saying that everybody's trying to work peacefully in the world, and that's terrible. That's my best guess of what he's saying. I'm hearing like 30 sentences go on at the exact same time. He's like talking about some one thing, and then the next sentence he's talking about another. This guy can't even keep these sentences straight, yet he's obsessed with the idea of other people. Calm down.
You need to be under the Bible. You just need to find Jesus. What the?
Early Africans
One nation under God. That's how it works, buddy.
were hunters and lived in hierarchical system, never learning about the world beyond their little tribal chiefdoms. They had
This guy just mentioned Benin, and now he's saying that they were just hunter gatherers and they never went further than that. Are you also high?
They had no idea that the world existed. It's real.
Leave it to this guy to take an already dumb statement and make it even dumber. They had no idea that the world existed. So when they opened their eyes and they looked around, they were like, "Oh, the world doesn't exist." The hell are you talking about?
Hard to believe, but there are tribes to this day that have no idea. They wonder what the giant metal flying birds going over and stuff, and do not know that there are things like TVs, which nowadays are real thin, and there's a magic portal to moving pictures and flying metal birds, and they're just so far away that from the concept it's not even funny.
Uh what what century is this guy from? By the way, this video is 3 weeks old. Like for some of you are probably thinking, oh, this is like a video from 10 years ago or something. This video is 3 weeks old, and this guy is saying that people in Africa look at an airplane and think it's a metal bird. Really? That is funny. If you think like that, then that is funny. Keep in mind, it would make sense if somebody is this delusional about everything that they would be on this side of politics. Like mentally, their mind is so far away from reality that it actually makes sense now. Like, oh, okay, so you have no concept of reality. Everything you're saying, everything you're doing is just so confused.
And slavery still goes on to this day. Yeah, we ended it for the civilized people because it's a mistake. You don't want to take prims into that type of world.
Was it a mistake? Oh no, this seems like it was not a mistake. You remember how Mr. Beast is starting a company where he is deliberately trying to avoid using child slavery inside of the cocoa plants? You remember that part? Because the other companies are deliberately using child slavery. The civilized countries. Oh yeah, by the way, the same countries that will deport the hell out of quote unquote illegal aliens, and then within 5 seconds, remember when Donald Trump was like, "Okay, we're not going to deport the ones which are working for these major companies because we need the slave labor, we need the extremely cheap labor." So anyone who's in America and has a dignified job, they can leave. Anyone who is basically being exploited, they can stay.
They never made that mistake before, and now looking back, they have. They made a directive, and we should leave everybody alone. Do you notice how that happened? How we don't want to go to Andaman Islands and ruin that, or we don't want to go to the and just let them naturally da da da. Well, what about these over here that you're trying to shove up people's all the time? Don't you want diversity?
Hey, somebody better come get their uncle, bro. This guy, get him away from the medicine cabinet or whatever the hell he's taking, because this guy has gone way too far. He has no idea I have no idea what he's talking about. And I'm one of the people who I consider myself a great listener. I have no idea what he's talking about. He just disconnected points, almost like someone who's, under the influence.
What? I mean, look, people. This can't work like that. It's the downfall of Western civilization. Let's try to come to some type of reasonable thought.
Look, everything can't work like that. It's the downfall of Western civilization. Let's try to come to some reasonable thought. Does that does that sentence make sense to anybody? Look, it might be the downfall of Western civilization. Let's come to some kind of reasonable thought. What the hell?
Rather than to come into a pandering shit. People don't get so much off their card, their pander card. Don't leave home without it. That card, you don't get so much.
Yeah, that's that AI right there. Made you a nice panda card. Now, can you get AI to make sense of what you're saying? Because I could put your stuff in AI and try to get, but I bet it's gonna say this person is unreasonable, illogical, and not worth your time.
Let's just look about slavery and what he tells you now.
Slaves who were the lower caste and women and children were assets. So the more wives and children a man had, the more he was thought of as a wealthy man.
So anybody who knows anything about African history, first of all, he's putting all of African history together, which is ridiculous. But let's pick place by place, right? South Africa. Let's pick South Africa as a good example because I know a lot about it. So in the Zulu regions, there were no slaves. So already is wrong. Secondly, the idea that the more the it is true. If you had more wives, it proved that you were wealthy. But why did it prove that? It's because they had freedom to marry you or not to marry you. How do I know? Because I've played this video all the time. They used to use beads and they used to use all of these things. And if the wife didn't want to marry you, they could say no. And this happened all the time. Obviously, back then as well, because there was a difference between the rich and the poor, there were some women who would marry these rich old men because they had a lot of money. In later years, you start seeing force, but this had to do mainly with the modernized, civilized world or whatever. But that part is dumb. Secondly, children abandoned and did whatever they wanted a lot of times to their parents. I mean, the whole story of Shaka Zulu is how the woman, literally the wife of, the mother of Shaka Zulu, literally was doing her own thing. Shaka Zulu does his own thing, kills his own brother, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you can say he was a king, so he's different. Okay, what about the several different smaller people who run away and form their own tribes away from the Zulu people? What about that? What about the female rulers that ruled at the time as well? What about that? And then you try, like, firstly, there's nothing unique about polygamy. Let's just get that out of the way. Polygamy is something that existed in all countries. And then there are places in Africa that did not practice polygamy at all. And not because of Islam, not because of blah, 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 but because they just didn't.
fought many internal battles and didn't even develop proper script that could have evolved into a top-notch writing systems until the Europeans arrived.
This is another false statement. The Garamantes had writing. The Muslims already had brought writing to Africa. You have Ethiopians with a Ge'ez script. You have Meroitic script. You have all kinds of script that existed in Africa. Not to mention, you said ones that could evolve. There's plenty of scripts in Africa that could evolve into language, into writing. And of course, we don't have to leave out the fact that the people of Africa basically invented the type of writing that now exists all over the world in Egypt a long time ago. And even if you don't consider those people to be black, the Sudanese people were the first to adopt the ancient Egyptian language outside of the Egyptians. So,
They had no writing system. They couldn't count. their slavers account where they were trying to get people that could count to 10.
So this is a very old myth, this idea that Africans could not count to 10. And this is why I went and got the Congolese dictionary so that I could show there were people, black people, by the way. This is why we will remain Afrocentrics in their eyes. There are black people in Africa, and this is one of them, obviously, who believe that Africans could not count to 10 before Europeans came, that they would really count to two, is what the people would think in their head. And I had to literally go and get dictionaries. I got books, dictionaries from Zulu, Swahili, blah, 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 all these, and go, listen, these languages are all Bantu languages, and they all count to 1 to 10 in the same exact way. Do you not see that this is proof that this it did not come like in the 1800s? Counting to million, over a million, is something that they did back then, and it's written down. And they would be like, "Oh, not good enough. That's the 1700s." It's like, okay, here's the Congolese dictionary. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 100 in the dictionary from the 1500s. And hey, look, the words are very similar to those that are there today. Isn't that weird? So I don't feel like going through the entire PDF and looking up the word in Portuguese and then looking it up in Italian in order to get the numbers. So let's go with Kituba because it's the closest language to the language that was spoken in the Kingdom of Congo. And you can see here 1 to 10, Morsi, Zule, Tatu, which is 3 in most of these languages, Tanu, which is 5, Nana, and then Kumi, which is 10. In Zulu, it's the same. In Swahili, it's the same. This is how we know the Bantu expansion happened, because we can literally trace it linguistically, literally trace it geographically, literally trace it with the drums, literally trace it with everything. Civilization.
They didn't trust the number 100 and thought it was magical, and so they couldn't even come up with that concept. They just
So, hectophobia is the fear of number 100. And let's examine the contradiction here. So this guy says these people can't count past 10 or even to 10, yet they have a fear of the number 100. How? How do they have a fear of a number they can't count to? Tell me that. And then here's a second thing about it. Hectophobia is more common in the West, where the word phobia basically means being a child. You know, everybody's got a phobia of some kind. One of the silliest one is the fear for the number 13.
But the actual America we now live in has things like the fear of numbers. This one freaks me out every time I walk into an elevator and it's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. I did the experiment. 80% of all buildings along Broadway in New York City do not have a 13th floor. This is the United States of America, and we have people afraid of the number 13.
It looked like a blur to them. They didn't understand. So you had to get 10 and 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 10, and now you got 100. And yeah, it's just all of.
So, for any of you who are concerned about how people learned how to count, learning to count to a million is a prehistoric thing. Human beings have been counting way past 100,000, 300,000, 400,000. You know how they did it? It's like they go on a tree and then they start plucking and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they'd pluck like 100 off of the tree. And then they just sat down and thought, if I had 100 of those trees, how many would I pluck? And that's how they ended up having such great numbers in their head. They didn't even need to count. That's why when you go to some parts of Africa, there's over 3,000, 4,000 cattle in one area. And that person knows that all of those cattle are his. How does he know? Now, the Europeans who lied to Africans tell us that the way that they did this was by name. So they would go, this cattle is named this one is named that, which by the way would be more impressive than knowing them by number. But that's not even true. Instead, they just knew what their count was and what species they were, and that was it. Again, it's so simple how these people could easily, I could be a much better person who tries to denigrate Africa because I know so much information. It's so weird how they go out of their way to lie.
Mess on things and stuff, and everybody wants to say, "Oh, bad white man," but is cannibalistic prim ook ook great? What are you saying? Everybody wants to try to turn them into you to help out, and all that. What the?
So I understood the first part, and obviously it's stupid to say that Africans were cannibalists when we know there were cannibalists in Europe as well and Asia and all this other stuff. And again, minority of the populations in each place. But even worse than that is the last part of the sentence. Again, it's like, ooh, ooh, I don't know what that is. And then he starts going into like, that last sentence, I have no idea what it is talking about.
When ships pulled up like this, it might as well have been a spaceship.
This guy is so ridiculous. So again, we can see black Africans and obviously with Middle Eastern people with those ships, kind of what ships do, put you in the vicinity of other people. Here you can see Swahili ships, those are the ones in white, fighting against Portuguese ships with the aid of the Ottomans.
When things rolled down the carts and coming down the thing, that might as well have been a car. That might as well, the natural evolution.
So again, this is stupid, especially considering the fact that Africans had the wheel and had been using it forever. I will talk about this in detail in another conversation because I have more to add to this.
Of these other people led to all those advancements. They got none. They got left back in time in a weird way. And then their genetics actually show it too, with a 19% unknown ghost arcade.
So, are you going to play the other guy's video again, or are we done here? Because I don't want to hear you ramble on about your little theories.
Hominid form, like a land of the lost. Can you understand now, rather than the pander bullshit people and media tries to shove on you?
Yeah, more than anything, I'm actually confused who watches this. Like, who's sitting down watching this and going, yep, sounds correct.
No. Let's let him tell you. The man that's trying to tell you, do you think somebody's got him putting him up to this, or do you think he thinks he needs to tell you?
So let's go see what he has to say. The man, he puts the stuff and he thinks he needs to tell you. It's like baby talk.
The European colonizers.
Oh, by the way, yes, I do believe that somebody's paying him to say what he's saying. Yes, I do believe that. I believe that somebody is paying him to say what he say. I believe a lot of these people are getting paid to say what they say, and they're trying. And a lot of the right people realized, or the right wing people, not the right people, the right wing people realized that there's a lot of money in talking trash about black people. Defending black people for a lot of people is boring, which is why I keep doing it, even though I get like 30 views on the videos. But I'm never gonna stop defending black people, especially after all of this garbage. People need to be reminded that you can't get away with stuff like this. When if they go out of their way to go search, and I want there to be at least one video out there where they go, okay, so they were just lying about that part.
Who were in charge at the time didn't quite understand this. When they conquered Africa, They met people who were so underdeveloped, both mentally and structurally. It was
Ew. Hearing a black person actually say this sounds so disgusting. Like coming from that, I'm so used to hearing it come from white people that I think I've become numb to it. But hearing a black person say it, it's like, oh my God.
difficult for the Europeans to consider the conquered Africans equal because they were lacking in so many ways. The Europeans
They didn't consider that they conquered them because there wasn't really there. It was a simple thing. They could just walk over. Everybody thought they were spacemen. Everybody had neat things they had never seen before.
You know what's funny? We actually have lists. Offa Dapper is a good example of stuff that Europeans traded with Africans. And not many of them are unknown in Africa. It's just that they would rather have someone else build it than they build it themselves because it's a waste of time. Like, build whatever.
And he looked good in his little Don Johnson outfit here.
divided Africa amongst themselves and tried to teach the Africans how to govern and run countries. Of
So I actually recognize the video that he's playing. That little snippet of a video is from Central Africa, and it's when Europeans were starting to get a lot of pushback from people saying that basically they had turned civilizations in Africa into nonsense. And so they try to put out these propaganda videos like, oh, we're going to industrialize Africa for the in real life. Everybody knew that had nothing to do with that. And so they got eaten alive by the media. To put that in a very simple way, what I'm trying to say is the European powers had never had an interest of trying to make Africa work ever. They never did. They just wanted to siphon all the money. And then when that became obvious, then they start doing this nonsense about civilizing mission and all this other stuff.
course, humans are going to be humans. The Europeans exploited Africa, but during that exploitation, they taught the African skills, introduced a structured educational system with Western languages and script, and built cities in Africa.
So I think it's important that I just put it out there. There are more buildings built in Nigeria, Cameroon, Congo, all these places since independence. A lot of these places were never built to have the amount of housing. There's so much that even places like Google and stuff can't track it. Before that, there was a couple buildings in Africa. These buildings were not the type of modern buildings that you have today.
But nowadays, colonizers supposed to be bad. Where you
Okay, I mean, if you think colonization is good, then let us colonize wherever the hell you're from. Stupid idiot.
took these people and you tried to get them with something at least going on whatsoever, and millions and hundreds of millions and billions on through trillions have been wasted to try to get them to a point that they still can't do it.
Millions and then billions and then trillions, and then they still can't do it, can they? How about the millions, billions, and trillions? Which, what's that guy's name? The guy from Liberia, which they used to, um, basically they used to take stuff out of from the country. What's his name? It's got an American name. Charles Taylor. How about that? How about that guy who they used to try and basically take all the resources from the country in their millions and billions?
Oh, but colonizer bad. Really? Cannibal Prim great? No? No, whenever you try to act like that, could you start comparing yourself to them? And let's not lie, because that's very unbecoming.
Well, ain't that cute? Let's not lie. In this video, you have the nerve to say, let's not lie. In this video, in this video here that we're watching, you're going to sit here and say it's unbecoming to lie.
The tribal incompatibility of the Africans was never fully understood by the Europeans, who were used to nations formed around single ethnicities like Germany, France, or England, and wanted to create out of Africa nation-like countries resembling theirs in Europe. Never
Right, right, right. So in real life, these people in Europe were fighting wars against each other, constantly turning on each other. Religions were always backstabbing, turning around. All of a sudden they're Catholic, all of a sudden they're Protestant, all of a sudden they're this, they're that, burning people at the stake, witch hunts, ethnic identities flipping now and then, and basically, that's what happened. Then you have the Vikings, you have the goddamn whatever. There's all kinds of people who came in and they would basically devastate the entire regions. So this idea of like, oh, they were just so stable. When
did they envision that the black African functioned differently. If Europe had known that Africa would have turned out the way it is today, they would have never left that land to the blacks.
oh dear Lord, here we go. If Europeans never knew that Africa would turn the way they did, they would have come sooner. If they knew what they would have come sooner. You know why? Because then they could exploit the hell out of it and get out of there faster. But because they were too busy fighting wars against each other, and obviously the Barbary coasts, the North African coast was pushing them away, kicking their butt, they really couldn't make their way over here. And then when they finally did make their way over here, they had to live on the islands because the Africans were not dumb enough to allow them to live amongst them. They were too smart to realize, to be like, oh, come this way, guys. They were like, nope, these guys got bad intentions. Stay on that island over there. And they would complain about it, the Europeans. And you know what? They were right, because in only 100 years, they destroyed everything.
Exactly. Listen closely. If we would have known, we would have gone through everything and still ended up almost nowhere but they're a leech. It wouldn't have been worth doing. The original concept was to teach them something, and they would become so good at it, people would want those pottery jugs or whatever, and they had something to trade with.
Just let the other guy talk. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You don't even sound like you understand what the words that are coming out of your mouth.
Other than your own people. But that's not what happened. But looking back, and hindsight being 2020, I'm sure most people, oh, don't worry, there's not a racist police coming through your door or anything stupid.
I hate that I can follow the first part of it, and then the rest of it, I'm just lost. I have no idea what he's saying in the last part.
Inside yourself, you realize this whole thing was a mistake. And to try to put prims in a spaceman's world is an ultimate mistake. Star Trek talked about their prime directive, and whenever they find a planet with prim people, they weren't supposed to mess with them all or do things. Why? Because you end up becoming a god and all these weird things.
Well, this is not no Star Trek, so you can go to hell with that one.
So there's an idea of that happening, and that's what brought about humanity on Earth. But certain people were not touched at all by the things that happened. Let's continue.
Certain people were not touched at all by the things that happened. Great sentence.
Control over it. In the late 50s and early 60s onward, the various African countries were granted independence with foundations laid.
Granted? What do you mean granted independence? Granted independence? You mean they ripped the chains of colonialism off of them? Granted? When did they get granted? Who voluntarily left?
By the Europeans, and institutions that had functioned whilst under the European rule, all intact.
Yeah, so they had colonized it enough and taught them and gone through this hellish trouble to try to get them up to par to something.
Wow, how magnanimous. They came to Africa to teach us that. When did that happen, by the way? Where's those books about, oh, we just want to go to Africa to teach the people how to live? Seems like most of the books that I read are like, oh yeah, this place is great. There's all kinds of gold and stuff that we can steal and bring. Oh yeah, sir, major, this one other island, that place, we've conquered it because we know that you need this type so that you can fight against the Mohammedans. How about all of those? What about all of those statements? Oh yeah, these people here are called the Zinjis, and these Zinjis, they fight with the Mohammedans, and they try to kill us when we went there. Those are the type of statements you hear, not any of the stuff that you're talking about, oh, we want to educate these people so they can live in cities.
And then they're like, okay, well, it's all set up. Everything's great. All right, we're going to back out. All right, we'll see you later. And the next time they showed up,
They then packed their bags and said, we'll see you later, huh? The revisionist history here is unbelievable. They just packed their bags. They're like, you know what? I think we've built enough, guys. You guys take care of this city. And then they hit their little UFO button and went back to planet Europe or Europa. They didn't fight till the last man. They didn't exploit and kill and isolate and put people in camps and threaten and say, go around the world trying to spread propaganda that the Africans can't govern themselves. They will destroy the nations, which is what you're repeating right now.
everything had gone to shit. And the people they used to run it were all killed because of jealousy and other people that wanted to try to run it. And it just ran itself into the ground and was the slums. There's still pieces of that left today. This is not something somebody's making up.
Actually, it is something that someone is making up, and that somebody is you.
Blacks in America, oh, we as smart now. Oh, shut the listen. You can't listen. You're so busy trying to talk over somebody, you can't even listen or help yourself. Look, here's a magic box that can listen to music and all kinds of fancy, just spaceman.
Oh, you mean the one where you guys stole all the ideas from people of color and then you pretended you built it? You mean that type of spaceman stuff?
Africa was this shining baby that was going to prove everyone wrong. As soon as the white man left, that tribal tendency that governed the mindset of the black African for centuries ignited. Black African culture.
So again, revisionist history, this idea that Africa would be the shiny baby. They left and left this shiny baby and thought that they would know.